Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a full review of the new Isamaya Wildstar collection. So I was able to get this before most people because they did a pre-sale launch pop-up in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, and I was able to pick up a little bit of everything from the collection. And I do have a first impression video already up that I posted I think about 2 weeks ago now. And now that I've had a few weeks to play with things, I wanted to come back and give you more thoughts, more in-depth thoughts, comparisons to other formulas, and so on. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a soft spot for indie makeup and colorful makeup, and I have new content every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. So just a heads up, this is probably gonna be a long video. I've been doing that a lot lately. Like every once in a while I have a 12, 15 minute video, but lately they've all been like a half an hour at least. I'm just a long-winded person apparently. I have a lot of thoughts. So I did post a first impression video a few weeks ago and 2 weeks ago now, I think. And I've had time to use everything multiple times now and get more acquainted with this formula, especially compared to the last one and some other formulas. So I wanted to come in, do a look, talk about the formulas, do some comparisons between some other brands, so you can kind of see what the textures and formulas feel like, in case you were interested in picking this up, or if you did buy it and you're just waiting for your pre-order to come. Normally I don't like to wear long sleeves when filming this kind of stuff because I swatch a lot, and I don't like to roll my sleeves up because then they get baggy and weird, but I think I can do most of it on the back of my hands pretty easily because I'm not swatching out the whole palette necessarily. Also, I wanted to film this last week, but Thanksgiving and everything happened and kind of just forgot that was a thing. I don't really celebrate Thanksgiving traditionally. I don't really care about the holiday. I mean, the reason it was invented was not the reason most people believe, but I do like the food. So generally I cook for my chosen family. Like when we lived in New York, I would have like chosen family and friends that couldn't go home for the holidays over, and I would cook for everybody. This year, my best friend and I, because we live in the same building, finally shared everything and cooked, and it was a really nice time to just like spend time as our little family, but didn't get any filming done, which I'm not mad about. It's nice to have a little, not think about makeup at all. I barely even wore it, but I'm back, and I have a lot of stuff I want to film for the next month or so. Also, my birthday was the end of September, and my best friend bought me this necklace as one of the presents that she got me, and it finally came. She ordered it, I think, in August, and because it's all handmade and from the UK, it took a very long time for it to be made and shipped, but it finally came, and I wore it at Thanksgiving, and it's so pretty, so I had to throw it on today to get into. So if you didn't watch my first impression video, I will have it linked down below and in the cards. But I tried out the palette, I tried out the highlighter a couple of times the night before and that day. And then I put on the lipstick, lip liner, and mascara in that video. I don't think I'm gonna wear the lip liner today. I am wearing the lipstick already though, so I will start with that. I'll start with that, the highlighter, then I'll do the eyeshadow palette, and then I'll put the mascara on at the end. So this is the Lucky Kiss Diamond Glow lipstick. This is the shade Outlaw. Really love how out there the packaging is. I've said this before multiple times. I really appreciate how fully in Isamaya as a brand goes for the themes and how campy this is. But this, very pretty. This is a $50 lipstick, and I think I would much rather pay less, but I'm not mad that I have this. I've worn it a handful of times. It's really creamy, really hydrating, lasts nicely in the lips. It's not a matte, so it's not like a super long wearing lipstick, but it lasts really well for this type of formula. Really comfortable, lasts actually pretty well. If they ever do a sale, or if they do another sale, I'm definitely gonna pick up the other two colors because they're really pretty, and I like this. I just can't spend full price on 2 more lipsticks from them. But this is the shade I have on. I put it on with the lip liner in a more opaque layer for the first impression video. This is a very nice wash of color from it. So you can see it's like this duochrome metallic. There's like this gold green running through it, and then it's this really interesting brick color. Everything feels very nice, very luxe. It's got that magnet enclosure. These are all plastic, not metal, in case you were wondering. All of the components are plastic, but they do feel really nice. I think metal would have made them more expensive and really heavy, so I'm not mad about the plastic. But this is one layer, like one sheer layer blended out. So you can see it doesn't look overly metallic. You can build it up even more, and you do get more of that gold sparkle sheen, but it's not overly glittery, which I actually like. It is definitely probably not a shade over every day, especially because it's an expensive lipstick, but it is really nice. So looking at it in my mirror, I do see the gold sparkle and sheen, but it's not overly metallic. Or I've used metallic lips and they look different. This is like a soft high-end version of those like really bright metallic lips, but you can build it up and it does become pretty intense. And the lip liner is really nice. This is like 20 something dollars. Not the worst I've seen for a lip liner. It's a very pigmented, very creamy formula. I did break the tip off in that video because I had too much extended from twisting it up. It doesn't twist back down, but I really like this. It's a nice darker brick color, pairs nicely with this, pairs nicely with other lips, and it's very creamy. I'm very picky with lip liners because I find they can be too creamy and they just smear, or they can be too dry and they kind of hurt and tug. This is right in the middle where it's creamy, but it does set down nicely, lasts a very long time, works very well. So really do like this. And then the highlighter, I'll talk about that before I do the eyeshadow. I really like this. I've worn this on no makeup days, or like no makeup days where I just do a little concealer, which is my standard. If you would be interested in seeing my standard everyday base routine, let me know in the comments because I can definitely do that. This retails for $42. It is the Dazzle Up Highlighter in Sun Chaser. There's only one shade. You do get 5 grams of product. Similar component. I like the green eye here. It is a pull top, not a screw. If you screw, you'll just screw the base off of it. But it is a balm-like texture. And I did say this in the other video that if you swatch on your hand, you mostly just get sparkle. And it looks like it's just gonna be glitter. But you can see on the face, it doesn't necessarily give sparkle. It just gives like a wet effect, which I do appreciate. I think if you build it up, you can start to see more of the sparkle, or if you use your finger or something. I already have some on throughout here, and then on my nose and right here. And I feel like I see a little sparkle here, but nowhere else. I didn't roll it on. I used this brush. This is the highlighter brush from Kaleidos, which I also like for the cream highlighter from Natasha. It worked really well for that. But you can see as you brush along, you see sparkle all along the edge there. But on the face, it just translates as a really hydrating, wet effect. It looks really nice in person. And I was worried it was gonna be too sparkly. So I do really like this. It is $42, but the only thing I can think that is a comparison is the balm highlighters from Pat McGrath. So those are $50, and you get 3.5 grams of the balm in that. Like that's just a balm. No sparkle, no highlight, just a balm, like a base. And then you get 3 grams of the highlighter in those Pat McGrath sticks. So you get 6.5 grams total product, but it's about half highlighter, half balm. This is 5 grams for $42, so a little bit less. Per gram, probably more, or about the same. But it's both. It's a balm highlighter, so it's both of those things put together. So I really like it. Really happy I have this. I was worried because it has alfalfa extract in it, which is supposed to be one of those skincare hybrid ingredients and help with the elasticity of your skin, but I'm allergic to alfalfa. So I was very paranoid about trying this and wasn't gonna buy it, but my friend that picked this up for me in LA, because I couldn't go down again, bought it anyway. And no issues. I've tried it on bare skin with makeup. I've worn it for hours. I did patch tests on my wrists and stuff. no issue. So if you're like me and you're allergic to like hay and alfalfa and things like that, I haven't had any issue. Okay, so time for the palette. This is the Wildstar Pressed Pigment palette. So it is a pressed pigment palette because there's one shade that is a pressed pigment that's not safe for the eye area. If you're new to indie makeup, those are really common. They tend to be pink, red, purple, like those kind of shades, because the dyes they use, the pigments that they use to make them can stain the skin, and the FDA hasn't approved them for use in the eyes. The EU has, so they can call them an eyeshadow there. They just can't here. One of those weird things. I haven't had an issue with it, so when you open it up, this is the palette. If you hadn't seen it before, it looks like a giant belt buckle with the red-eyed horse. And when you open it up, here is the inside. And I used every shade in here multiple times, and I do have some clips of at least some of the looks that I've done, so I can insert those. But it is this pink shade, the like hot fuchsia pink. That is the one that is deemed unsafe for the eyes. I've used it on the eyes with no issues. So when I put it on my hand, it did stain a little bit. Came off after washing my hand a couple times or like using dish soap. But with an eye primer and stuff, I haven't had any issues on the eyes with staining. But I don't normally have a lot of staining issues, and it doesn't really bother me. If that does bother you, don't use it on your eyes, or do a patch test on your wrist first. But I just wanted to point that out there. But in this palette, you get 3 mattes. So you get this cream color, a kind of caramel brown, and then a chocolate brown, and then a black. So the black is the 4th matte. That's the big pin in the middle. Really like this matte formula. So her first palette, the industrial palette, did not have any mattes in it. And I will do a comparison between the two later. Might be able to film that today, maybe in a couple days, we'll see. It's been a busy day. And it's already 3:30 in the afternoon, and then my husband has calls the rest of the day before dinner, so we'll see. So this is the first time having a matte formula from her, and I do really like it. I have a few palettes and formulas to try and compare the texture to, then I'll do after I put it on my eyes. So I'll describe it while I use it, and then I'll do that as well. And then it has mostly the same formula for metallics that I can tell. So the industrial palette had a bunch of different formulas in it. This doesn't really, this has like 2 to 3. So you've got these really sparkly, 3 to 4. It's got these really sparkly duochrome metallics that are really pretty, and I will do some comparisons for those as well. And then you have this shade here, which is really creamy and a little less textured than the others. So this works as a one and done really beautifully, and I've done that a few times. And then there's this purple shade that's a little more sheer and a little more similar to what she used in the first palette. And then there's the blue and the pink are kind of the same formula. They're a little firmer pressed and a little less textured than these 3. So I just washed all of my brushes. A couple of them I've used once or twice, like this one, so I have cleaned it off. But I'm gonna go in. I already put some Urban Decay primer down. It's my go-to. And I'm gonna start with this shade. So this is a nice highlight shade. It's a cream. It's not a bone white. It's very much a cream shade. So if you are on the fair side, I'm in the medium range. It could be a transition shade if you're really light. For me, it's a nice matte highlighter. Like I can put it on my brow bone or the inner corner, and it does work as a really nice, creamy, brightening shade. But I'm gonna go in with this shade here, which is the more caramel brown shade, which is the perfect kind of transition shade for my skin tone. So I always pat off, and I'm just gonna put right here. So you can see it's decently pigmented, very soft. These are really silky in texture, so when you touch them, they just feel ultra silky and soft, and they kind of blend themselves, which I love. Especially for a $100 palette, I expect them to work really nicely. So that was one I went tap, tap, tap. But that was one dip into the palette. So you can see it's not overly pigmented, but it is decently pigmented. I used the same shade as a transition in my first video, and I really like it. I think it works really beautifully. It melts into the skin. It's one of those mattes that has, I have a little bit of sparkle there, but that's not from the matte. It's one of those mattes that has like, it's not a satin, but there is a little bit of a pearl to it. Like, it's not dry matte. So there's that little bit of like soft sheen, which I think works really well. If you have I have very oily eyelids and they still last on me with the primer, but it's kind of like how Lisa Eldridge has been describing her new matte formula, where hers is more of a cream kind of consistency, but it has that like little bit of luminosity to it so that it's really flattering on different textures and skin. And I think this is kind of similar. It has just enough like luminousness to it, luminosity, that it doesn't look dry at all. It looks really, really nice. And it blended, and as you saw, it blended really easily. I've also used it to blend the edges out of a shade, like put a metallic down and blend those. Works well for that, but I did want to show you kind of what it looked like by itself real quick before I did anything else. And you can see I'll build up a little bit more. And you can see it definitely builds on itself. So it's not instant pigment. It's got instant pigment, but it does build nicely, which I really appreciate. I like a matte formula that can be kind of sheared out or built up. I don't want only sheer, like where it takes 12 layers to get any pigment, but I also don't want like so much pigment you can't do anything with it. I like this kind of formula a lot. And you can see that my brush has even made some like dents in it because it's so silky and so soft that there's like bristle marks from this. That's part of why I like Pat McGrath's matte formula so much, is that you can shear it out or really build it up. It's a little more pigment in this right off the bat, but it's that similar idea, or like Viseart's mattes. Those don't have a ton of pigment right away, but really build on each other. And I do have Pat and Viseart here to do some swatch comparisons, so you can kind of see that. Okay, so I did use the darker chocolate brown in my first impression, so you can see that and the black blended out really nicely. I've used the black as like a smudgy eyeliner quite a few times. Really, really do like this black, but I did want to show you this more bronze chocolatey shade. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of that. I'm gonna put that right here. So there's been a lot of days where I didn't even use the mattes. I just use the shimmers or just use this. Especially if I want to do a one and done. This is the perfect one and done shade. So you can see it's this nice chocolate brown kind of color, but it's got this bronze gold flip to it and sparkle. But if I blend it into the crease with the same brush I used before, it blends into that matte perfectly and actually blends out like a matte. I've done that multiple times where I just picked up a little bit on a fluffy brush, patted it all over, and then what's left kind of blend up here, and I don't get a bunch of sparkle or texture like you can with some metallics. It blends out so smoothly. I think this is a really nice formula. This brown is the most similar to like a Pat McGrath kind of shimmer, that blendability and creaminess, but it has a little bit more sparkle and shine. Like her standard metallics are really beautiful, but they don't have that like dimensional sparkle that this does. So I do really like this, and I really like this formula. I'm excited to see this formula in her palettes. Okay, and then I think I'm gonna stick kind of neutral today. So you've got a lot of really beautiful shimmers in here. I would say this gold shade here, it's like a gold green duochrome. This shade here, which is like an iridescent gold green duochrome multichrome. Then you've got this like bronze pink, like it looks pink there and then bronze. And then this one is like gold and pink. So it's a brighter pink, more peachy pink, and then it's got a very strong gold shift. Those are all the same formula. Really beautiful, really love those. This pink, really nice as well. It's very similar to the blue. I do have a video think I have a video of me doing this as one and done, or this with this on it, like I did for Thanksgiving, that I can insert here. And then I did also the other night, just because I didn't have footage, or I didn't take photos of my looks because it was dark and gray, I went in the bathroom and put the blue and the purple on my lids, so you can kind of see what those look like all over. Really like those. I think I'm gonna go in with this shade. I think it just kind of works with my sweater and everything a bit really well today. So it does pick up very nicely on this rougher brush. And you can use your fingers as well, but like, look how intense that is. It's much more intense than this. This is like satin with some sparkle, or like standard metallic. This is really sparkly. This is more indie kind of a shadow. Really beautiful, really intensely sparkly. Really love this formula. I've used my finger and it works well, but I prefer a brush in general because you can be more precise. And I never get fallout with any of these. That is something I really appreciate. I've even used like this shade or the gold on the lid and blended the edges, and I had like a minimal amount of fallout, mostly from putting things in the inner corner. I had like a little bit of fallout here, but I had none from blending here. And this is just such a pretty everyday shade. This is kind of an everyday look. If you're not gonna do the one and done, using like this shade or the gold, perfect one and done looks. And then just to kind of show how much sparkle that this more iridescent shade has, I'm gonna put that over as well. And these melt together beautifully. All of the shadows in here kind of melt together nicely. Very layerable and friendly for that. They're textured and creamy, but not being overly textured that they're like prone to a lot of fallout, and not so creamy and thick that they don't really layer or feel heavy. Like, that's one thing I have. I don't love the Sydney Grace metallics because they're so thick and heavy. They feel kind of heavy on my lids, or they can. This doesn't. So just like her first palette, these just kind of melt and layer together perfectly, as you can see. So you can get a lot of dimension depending on what you pair. So this is all really nice if you were like traveling. I will probably keep this as, use this as a travel palette, because I can do just mattes. I can do like a light layer of the sparkle if I want, or I can do this as a one and done, like easy day look. And then I can quickly throw one of these other shades on top for like a really impactful going out sparkle look. I mean, I'll wear sparkle during the day too. I know a lot of people won't though. So I did want to mention that. And like I said, I have zero fallout. I have a little bit of sparkle in my inner corner from brushing, but like it's literally right here and not very much. I'm just gonna take a little bit more of this shade again and actually put it on my inner corner by itself, so you can kind of see, especially if I use this pencil brush, the effect you get. Really nice little gold sparkle. So you do have to like golds and pinks, because these are both pink. This is really pretty purple, and then these all have kind of a goldness to them. Okay, so I'm gonna curl my lashes and put some of the mascara on real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and I added a little bit of the black, a tight line with a little pencil brush, or a liner brush actually, the rougher, tiny little one. I just kind of tight lined with that, and then I put the mascara on. I also wanted to say, the lipstick does really wear nicely. I've been wearing it for a while now before I started filming, and I've been drinking this, and there's like tiny bit that is worn off on here, but not really much, and you can't see any effect on here. So it does wear really nicely in my experience. Okay, so for the mascara, it is probably the same formula as the rubber lash. It does feel very similar, but it has a very different applicator. So love the packaging. It's campy, over the top, love that. But I feel like the rubber lash gives me a little bit more length. It does add some volume, but it's more of a lengthening mascara. This definitely adds more volume, but it's a very different brush. It does have an interesting shape to it. So it's not just, at first glance, it looks like just a standard brush for a mascara, but there's like a spiral to it. So you can see like there's less bristles going around in kind of a spiral pattern. So I actually think it works better than most. Like, I've tried a lot of mascaras, especially drugstore mascaras, and I don't like them. Like, everybody loves the Maybelline Sky High and those, and that just clumped on my lashes no matter what I did and looked bad and gave me like spidery, clumpy, gross lashes. This doesn't do that. This does add, this is one coat, so you can add multiple coats and get really dramatic lashes, and it can get a little clumpy if you do that. But I know some people like that. I don't. I like a one coat. With a thinner mascara, I'll do two, but I prefer one coat. One coat, they're separated, but they are thickened, they're long. They're not quite as long and intense looking as with the rubber lash. That definitely, the shape of the brush really adds a lot of length. But this is really pretty. I really like the formula. I don't know if it's a tubing mascara or what it is, but it doesn't flake, doesn't have any issues, doesn't smudge. I've worn it all day, both the rubber lash and this, and I've never had like black smudges down here, which I do sometimes with other mascaras. Works great even when it's kind of wet out. Haven't had an issue. So it's not waterproof, but it seems, or they don't claim to be, but it does seem like a very long lasting one, and it's not overly complicated or hard to get off, which I also appreciate. Okay, so to talk more about the formula. So you saw how these applied. I did want to say, so this one is definitely like, I'll swatch it. See, it's very shiny, very reflective, but it is a little smoother. So you don't have the like little bit of texture sparkle that you have there. So if you like a really smooth metallic, this and the blue are both that formula. Like I said, I do have myself wearing the blue and the purple that I can insert here. Really like the way they look. I do prefer to apply them with a brush. You can see, at least on my fingers, with the light reflecting, it might be hard to see, but this is a little more opaque and a little more creamy. This is a little bit more sheer than this, but they're both more of a smooth metallic. So I'll put them right here because I'm gonna do a bunch of swatches. And you can kind of see it's a little less opaque and a little more sparkly. And this is a little more smooth and can be pulled out. And if it doesn't stain your skin, it could also be a really pretty kind of glowy blush, but you can kind of see a little slight variation there. The purple is even more sheer than any of the other ones, and it is, like, it does have a little bit of a blue flip to it. If you are someone that experiences hard pan, or if you got the first one and you had hard pan issues, like a few people did that I saw, this is probably the one that's gonna do that. I've used my fingers with it and I do like the effect. You get a little more opacity right away, but it does make it harder to pick up afterwards. Like, it doesn't look like it has hard pan. It just kind of presses it in more, I think. But I've been able to use, like, if it does get like that, I just take a brush and I kind of wiggle. And you can see it does pick up, but it picks up less than the others. And I'll put it right here. And you can see it is much more sheer. Her sheer shades in general, this is different than the ones in Industrial, but they do build on top of each other, which I appreciate. So you can see it does build up and it's pretty reflective, and you can see that base color versus the purple. It is a really pretty wash of color, but if you like high intensity, really opaque shimmers, this shadow you're not gonna like. It is definitely more of that grungy wash of color that we saw in her first palette. But I really like the way this looks, and I like the way it blended on the edges. So I just had like this really interesting purple wash with that base shade blended out. Looked really nice. And like I said, I have a clip of it here. So you can see what it looked like all over. Did look really nice all over the lid. I'm doing, a tiny little swatch, but it is the one shade that if you don't like that kind of formula, this is the one you're gonna struggle with. Or just not like. But you can see the other ones are much more sparkly, much more opaque, and a very different formula. So now it's time for some comparisons for the formulas. So like I said before, the mattes feel really silky. The closest thing that I can say they feel like another brand's formula is maybe the mattes from Kaleidos. I adore how silky those are. This is a little less pigmented and a little more easy. I mean, those pretty much blend themselves, but this does so even more, I think, because it has a little bit less initial pigment. It just blends itself without trying at all, and then you add the second layer and they blend into each other and you get a really opaque color. But I do think that is the closest formula that I found. So I have a bunch of comparison palettes right here. I would say as far as pigmentation goes, the closest would probably be Viseart, which you know don't swatch well if you are on YouTube or Instagram very much. But people really love this formula because it builds on itself so nicely and blends so nicely, and this is very similar, but it's less dry. So that is something about Viseart mattes, is they can feel a little dry to the touch, and that's, I think, part of why they last so long. They're less creamy and they layer on each other so well. This is definitely a silkier consistency. So here is Viseart and here is the Isamaya. So you can see they both swatch about the same level of pigmentation. I mean, they're slightly different tones, but you can kind of see that. And I say, looking at them, the Isamaya looks less dry. Like, it just has that little bit of a softness and a silkiness that it just instantly melts into the skin, and I think is one of those formulas that will be very forgiving if you have textured lids. So I also grabbed the new Anastasia palette that I haven't used on my channel yet. I had a Sephora gift card, a late birthday present, because someone, my cousin, forgot to send it to me. So I got it right as time for the Sephora sale. So I used it to buy both of these because I've been wanting them for a while. And I'd say this, if you've tried the newer ABH formula, it is very silky, similar to that. But less powdery. I feel like you're gonna get you're gonna get more fallout possible with the ABH palette. You're not going to with this one. And then I also grabbed Melt Gemini, so I could kind of mentally touch them and like think about how they feel. Gemini also feels a little drier and definitely more pigmented. So here's the ABH shadow, and here's that Melt shadow. And you can see the Melt has a little bit of fallout around it because it's just a little drier. This does feel very similar to the ABH. And I know but it's somehow even softer. Like, the ABH feels softer, this feels silkier, if that makes sense. I have two Pat McGrath palettes here. I have a Mothership and one of the new little ones. So when I touch the Pat McGrath palette, it also feels much more dry. So this is Midnight Sun, and this is Nude Allure, and the new. The little palette definitely feels a little less dry, but they both feel a little drier. The tone is very similar to Nude Allure, but you can see here's Melt, ABH, Pat McGrath. So it's similar to the one in Midnight Sun in tone and kind of texture, but like a silkier version, like a less dry. I don't think dry is a bad thing. It's much less creamy and thick feeling, like the Natasha Denona formula, if you're familiar with that. I also have a Byredo palette, and I would say it's fairly similar to that. The Byredo feels even silkier and softer. The Byredo feels just as silky, but like less binding to it. I don't know if that makes sense. So there's a little bit more softness to it. And then I grabbed my Kaleidos Sashimi City because it also has shimmers that are kind of similar. I'll just swatch this matte. I would say, you can see there's the Kaleidos. It's a similar texture, not quite as silky still though, but a little more pigmented. And then here is the Byredo. Byredo's even softer. So I'd say if you took the Byredo formula and made it a little silkier and a little less soft, or the ABH, or if you took the Viseart formula and basically took the way that's formulated but made it silky instead of kind of dry feeling, that's what you get in these mattes. And I really like it. It is near the top of my matte formula now. It is really nice to use. So I'm gonna wipe off my hand with a microfiber towel. I'll leave those there because they're shimmery. And talk about a couple comparisons to the shimmer formula. I know people said they wanted to compare it to a Pat McGrath shade. So I will swatch this gold shade. Really love this one. You can see there's a bit of texture. It's got that kind of green gold look. And I'll swatch it next to one of Pat's normal shimmers and one of her baked shades so you can kind of see. But here is the shade from Isamaya. You can see there's a bit of texture, really sparkly, but doesn't feel dry. This, I'll do this one because this one is in both Midnight Sun and Divine Rose. This feels much more dry, but you're getting kind of a similar sparkle. It's a little more sparkly, but not by much. Like in person, they look pretty similar effect-wise. Like if I'll do the gold shade right on top of that. That one's definitely a little drier. So you can see Isamaya versus the two Pat shades. It's more similar to this one. I don't remember the name right now, but you can see tone and color-wise, it's very similar to this, but there's like a grittiness to this and a dryness to this, which I don't mind. I think they melt in the skin really nicely and they add a lot of sparkle, but this is just the same effect, but without that grittiness. So if you don't like the texture of those big shades, you'll really like this. So I'll swatch those right here. So here is that's the Pat shade, the one, and then here's the second Pat shade. See, a little more blinding. And then here is the Isamaya shade. It's kind of a hybrid between the two. It's that color and melts nicely into the skin like that one, but with more of the shine and reflectivity of this big Pat McGrath shade. But much more, I mean, it has more of a base, but it's much more soft and creamy, and not as gritty, and it doesn't have that baked texture. I wanted to compare it to this shade from Sashimi City, which is my favorite Kaleidos palette next to Club Nebula, and it's a very similar color. I would say the Kaleidos formula is one of my favorites, especially these shimmers, but it's a little bit more dry. It doesn't feel as creamy. So I'll put that right here. You can see that it's a little more sheer and a little like less textured. So you're gonna get a similar, I really like this shade. I think this gives a very similar effect to the baked Pat McGrath shades, but it's softer and not baked. This is a little thicker and creamier, but a little less sheer. I would say this one's a little more sheer than this, but pretty similar. And then I'll do a Terra Moon shade and one of the Byredo, so you can kind of get a comparison. So it's not gonna be like a thick, traditional metallic like ABH has or Melt or a lot of brands. It's also like this, even these shimmers, I mean, I love this palette, but you can see nice effect, but this feels softer. And you can see you're getting less sparkle, more of a wash of the color. So it's not at all like the Byredo shimmer. I would say the Byredo is like a drier feeling version of some of these. And then I forgot to do the regular Pat McGrath shimmer. I just have so many things right here, it's a little, so I'll grab this bronze. So it's much less thick and creamy. This bronze next to this shade. So I'll do them on the palm of my hand. So this is sparkle everywhere. So this is Pat McGrath. This is the bronze shade from Midnight Sun. Love this. It's a really good one and done. The edges blend out really nicely. And this is the really nice one and done shade from Isamaya. So you can see pretty similar. This is a little more reflective. This is more just like metallic. And this is metallic, but with lots of little sparkle. It's a little more similar to her newer metallic formula that she tried out in this. So I'll grab this bronze. And you can see very similar to Pat's formula, which you would kind of expect in these high-end luxury palettes. It's still very reflective, looks really pretty on the eye, but it's less straight up metallic than this one. It's got sparkle and sheen without being just metal, if that makes sense. And then the last thing I wanted to compare before wrapping up this very long video is I wanted to compare this shade here, the more iridescent shade, to Terra Moon's Light Year, which I grabbed my Terra Moon's palette, which is now very full. And I would say maybe Phoenix. I'll do Phoenix. So I have Light Year and Phoenix here, and I think it's the most similar to those, which those are like $16 a piece. They feel a little softer pressed and a little silky. I'll do them on the palm of my hand as well. So here is the Isamaya shade. And you can see it's just so reflective. It's got gold, green, a little bit of blue, and then it's got really like no base. It's that iridescent color. So when I turn this way, you don't see it. And then here is the Terra Moon shade. So you can see very similar effect. So Terra Moon's definitely has more blue in it, this particular shade, but it's that kind of a shimmer, which is rare in palettes, especially one that's on par. I sometimes see like an iridescent duochrome or multichrome in a palette, but none that give the same effect and shine as a Terra Moon shade, and I think this definitely does. You can see how reflective that are. And this is the one that I tapped over, so you can see it melts into the others really beautifully, or you could do something like this and just have a really blinding inner corner or all over the lid. So I really, really love this palette. It's $100, but I don't regret that. Her last palette was $115. This is a little cheaper. I think it's just a really beautiful palette. I think it's a really cute color story. It's wearable, but like different. It's, you know, you've got your neutral browns and you've got like gold, pink shimmers, but they're all special. They're all a bit of a duochrome. They all have something unique to them. They all layer really nicely. So it's kind of that mix of high-end luxury formulas and everyday wearable shades and the specialness of an indie shimmer, like an indie single or shimmer. So I think I'm really happy. I'm not gonna say it's 100% worth the $100. I think it is for me. I'm not mad that I spent $100 on this. Is it worth $100 to you? That depends. If you have never bought a $100 palette before, I'm not gonna say go buy this. I don't think you need to rush out and buy anything. But if you are a makeup collector and really appreciate different formulas and textures and this calls to you, I think it's worth it and I think you'll like it. I think it's just a really special palette. I think everything from this has been really nice. I think the brand as a whole is just that really interesting mix of that like luxe, high-end formulas and the indie textures and shimmers. So really, really happy I have this. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you would like other comparisons. I can always do another like direct, like compare this shade to this shade kind of thing. I can do that and post to Instagram or post to my community page. So if you have specific shades you want things compared to, let me know in the comments below. If you want another video with this or more looks, like a multi-looks video, let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do that. I just have other things that I want to film as well. So wanted to get like a comprehensive review, not necessarily a multi-looks video. Because those are hard to film versus just using in my spare time. But yeah, if you have anything else you'd like to know about this, let me know. I do know, I think some people might have started getting it or they got it in PR, but it is November 29th today. Hopefully this will go up tomorrow and the 30th. And they say the estimated shipping date is around Christmas, December 22nd. So you still have quite a while to decide if you want to get this, or I can make more content if you want more ideas before yours arrives. So just let me know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.